quick reminder, each episode could contain some game spoilers, so please listen or watch with discretion. And now, your hosts for the Gamer's Advocate, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
The people love me. They really love me.
Wait, hold on, I got something for this.
There you go.
You know this one, Glastonbury?
Well, welcome to another episode of the Gamer's Advocate podcast.
Start off there.
Today,
We
we're
just
going
do
to be...
this to boost our confidence before we start.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we cover a lot of things.
Looks like we're having fun this
and
way.
I know it appears that we're having fun, but inside we're dying. So, but yeah, you get 1,000 gamers in a room, you probably get 1,000 different opinions, and we love to cover games that we love. And today we're going to be doing something a little special, a little companion tier list of Mass Effect. So the general rules of this are going to be, I'm just trying to pull up my list here. We don't want to list the same companion twice, even in different games. For instance, Garrus. We don't want to list him in Mass Effect 1 and 2 and 3. We're just going to list him when we first meet him. So he's going to start off in Mass Effect 1, for instance. And we're not going to probably include temporary companions, because I can only really think of one. But outside of that, everybody's going to be available, and we should be good to go. Any questions?
Yeah. Can we redo it? Because I couldn't hear a fucking thing, because that guy's Twitch stream started up in the background.
Also, I just love the like determination for Legion to like plod through us just derailing his intro that whole time.
I
Get
thought
1,000
you-
gamers in a room. No, I'm interrupting.
I'm sorry. I thought you were memeing. I thought it was you playing it. It was only in the last few seconds when you stopped talking and the green thing disappeared. I was like, oh shit, it's me.
Oh, excellent work. Consummate professional.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Now
It
we're
wasn't-
going to have to share that pic of your webcam so people know what we're working with.
I do plan at some point to create a Discord for this channel, so that's definitely something that could go on there. Like, see our setup. Rate our setup.
Oh my god, I just want to see Tom's like these specs include like one glass bottle. 36 feet of duct tape.
Meters banana. Metric duct tape.
No, if you're using duct tape, it's a fuck up. You use feet for that. We use the vulgar units for duct tape.
Again, I am so sorry. I really thought you were memeing.
We have BananaHammockRepublic on our screen here. I do a Banana HR because it's just too long. And we have AMKomnenos. And I'm curious, Com, because we always call you Com based on your request. How do you say your full name?
AMKomnenos.
AMKomnenos. Did I say that
got
right?
Yeah.
All right.
You're in the top 5%.
Tom. If I just keep trying, maybe
Most
one day.
charitable way of saying no, you're not right I've ever heard.
That is the worst pronunciation.
And we are all dumber for having heard it.
It's actually Greg. You guys are way off.
Yeah, a lot of the letters are silent.
Yeah.
My name is Jeff.
And some are invisible.
Yeah. Well, I just it's one of those things that I think I've heard other people refer to it and you know, in your streams and stuff, and I don't know if you've ever like corrected them or not. You've always just said, just call me Calm.
Yeah. It's something I would never correct. I think as soon as this is your online name, you've accepted, you've opened the door that not everyone's going to get it right, or not anyone, very possibly. And it always felt like a very strange behavior to correct everyone. It's the worst introduction you can make. Hey, hello, Mr. AMKomnenos. Actually, I think you'll find it's pronounced no one's making friends.
Yeah. I was Legion forever. It was my gamer tag forever. And then Google came along and said I have to put in a surname for my name. Okay, well, that's how Grey was born. I never used Grey before 10, 11 years ago. But yeah. How did BananaHammockRepublic come to be?
So, BananaHammockRepublic was me losing my patience with somebody who was commenting on the way that I dress. And I informed them that I do not shop at BananaHammockRepublic.
There you go.
Is it a real thing? It's not a real thing, right?
A Banana Hammock is, a Banana Republic is, and Banana Republic is a clothing store.
I think this might be episode 500, and I have never pieced that together. It's a very, very good name. It's one of my favorites.
I'm a fan. That's why I kept it going.
Yeah, I tried to format it, and every time I did with the BananaHammockRepublic, the whole thing, it just looked wrong with Com's name and mine. It's not the length of it. It's just that I have to shrink it down. So I was like, I just Banana HR. Maybe nobody will yell at me.
Made the right choice.
Why all the branding is just BHR.
We're going to go over companions or squad mates in Mass Effect, and we're going to have a little tier system: S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier. And I was expecting us to go no further than D tier, but some quick conversations we had before we hit record, and these two believe that we should even go down to F. So we'll see. We'll see where that puts us, because
we should definitely go to F.
Yeah. So it probably won't be an averaging thing. Like if two of us say like S and another person says D for a character, I mean, in all honesty, that probably puts it at a B, but we can have some flexibility with that. But we're not going to list each companion.
Well, no, I think we need to figure out who's wrong.
Banana chose violence a long time ago.
Wrong.
Well, we're not going to list companions like multiple times. And Garrus is in all three. So we're not going to list Garrus in Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2 versus Garrus in Mass Effect 3. Those choices could define even how you react to him. But at the end of the day, I think we'll just kind of, when we are first presented with the option of keeping them, we know where they are. At least the three of us know where they are in the bigger picture. And we'll probably just talk about them once and be done with it. And then we'll go on to the each unique encounter for the squad mates that we get in 2 and then 3. All right. So there's Kaiden. The problem I have with a lot of characters like Kaiden that are essentially sentinels, right? They list him as a biotic person, but actually he's a sentinel. A lot of the characters in all of Mass Effect are essentially, sentinels. They're half this, half that. So the problem with those type characters, though, is that Kaiden especially, the powers that you get with him are more weighted toward the tech side. And yet he's supposed to be this biotic person that helps you. So if you bring him with Liara, it really amps up the party for that. But if you're all tech, then it kind of works out, especially in Mass Effect 1. But bringing somebody like Wrex is really the better version of that. I think with Kaiden, you don't have a lot of builds that really help complement him. He more or less takes the group's abilities and diminishes a bit. So I've never really liked Kaiden for that. Now, there's also the personality quirks that I've talked about in the past that I just don't like about him. I love Karth. It's the same voice actor. Yeah, Karth is the same voice actor in KOTOR, and it's a very similar character, but I love Karth. I can't stand Kaiden. He's just a bit on the... For an Alliance soldier to be as high rank as he is, he's so needy. And I don't need that on the ship.
I also think everything that you're kind of told about Kaiden, like as you learn about his character and develop his story, it's all focused on the biotic stuff. And he's not a pure biotic. It's all about the L2s and then the progression into the L3s. And nobody ever talks about the other half of Kaiden's abilities. And it's just like, yeah, if you're struggling so much, don't be a biotic. You've got that other skill set. Lean towards that. The one that doesn't give you brain hemorrhaging.
I think I always found Kaiden actually to be one of my Dark Horse favorite characters. But it's not for Mass Effect 1. I think their personality is so cagey.
It's weird because he doesn't survive Mass Effect 1.
I'm talking about the prequel novel. Um, so Mass Effect 1, I find him to be, quite uninspiring, a bit depressing from time to time. But he does, I think, have some of the more interesting dialogue. Not enjoyable, but interesting in terms of telling you a little bit about the world. And the idea of his suffering that he went through as one of the very early participants in that biotic program, I think that just paints a lot of color to the idea that this wasn't a completely smooth transition over from modern humanity to Mass Effect humanity. And it gives us this idea that it wasn't just, Prothean tech, and now we're super. It was Prothean tech, and now we're going to have to mess things up for a while. The joy, I think, with Kaiden comes a lot later, when you do get into Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, and he feels more able to actually speak with Shepard. And then it becomes incredibly more interesting. And that's the moment when, for me, he becomes a genuinely interesting character. And I do like that weird combination of biotic and tech. I think it's a pretty good character to have in the group, just as a basic catch-all. You can really build around him, and you're not going to build a perfect team around him, but you can almost build any other team around him. And he's just going to fill in those gaps nicely.
I hear I totally agree. You having a combination of biotic and tech definitely lends yourself to flexibility within the squad. It's just that the actual powers he has, I can find better in others. If that's kind of what I was saying. It's like he actually brings the group down, because if I said, you know what, I could bring Garrus, who may not be as strong biotically, but he's a massive tech tank. And if I'm anything tech, or if I bring Tali, or even if I bring Wrex, that little bit of extra biotic that Wrex has, which, we refer to stasis, it doesn't really do anything, but at least Garrus can do something to kind of help with that CC stuff. And we'll get into Garrus and Wrex, of course, but I'm just saying is that Kaiden, what he has, what he brings to the table, I can find in better squad mates. And that's why I don't really see him in that extra flexibility tier. Yeah.
Yes, it's like I said, I don't think he's the best at anything. He you can just almost build anyone else around him. That's really it for me. What I would like about Kaiden is he does allow me to run sort of my favorite little party quite easily, which is Shepard as a biotic, or biotic / soldier, along with Wrex, along with Kaiden.
Like Vanguard or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love that combination. Yeah. It's just violent.
Oh, let me tell you, if Kaiden was more of a Vanguard, a true Vanguard, you might get a different opinion from me, but he's not.
Yeah.
The thing with Kaiden being kind of that almost jack of all trades character is it kind of goes against something we've talked about before, where it's the outliers that are interesting. Kaiden is decent at everything, and it makes him uninteresting to me. I look for the people who are exceptional at one thing, and those people are the ones that I gravitate to. And we've also talked about, kind of the strategy of min-maxing, and you can't do that with somebody who's average at everything. If you're going for a min-max party, you're going for specialists, and you're balancing them against other specialists. Kaiden is not a specialist, and he's not invulnerable to nuclear detonation, so he doesn't make it to Mass Effect 2. So I just don't connect with him.
One thing that's kind of confused me is his personality is all over the place. Like, he becomes like, all right, we're going to make ourselves brave and do what we got to do. And then next thing you know, he's like, oh, I couldn't believe we survived that. I can't, I'm glad you saved me. Because if you play FemShep, you're the one who saves him. And when he starts telling his story about his, I don't really want to call her girlfriend. They were just very close, and it was turning into something, and he misses her, and he says that he really wishes that could have been different. Oh, by the way, I can't stop but thinking about you, Shep. He turns the gears so fast, and I can't keep up with him when he's like that. And that's the infuriating thing. And so when you see him later on in Mass Effect 2, if he survives the nuke, which never does, but if he were to survive the nuke in theory, right, and he's on the planet, you meet him, the reaction there is different from say another character that you would meet in that same scenario, because he's always been so wishy-washy. You don't know how to take his answer. Is he really serious? He could just change his mind once he walks away for 50 feet. He think, you know what, I was a little too harsh on Shep. That's what I get from Kaiden, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like even in that moment where you meet Ash or Kaiden, whoever survives in ME2, I think even though Ash's reaction is more aggressive, more problematic, it makes her more interesting because she has a reason to be upset. Maybe not with you, but she has a very good reason to be upset. And it's very reasonable for her to misdirect that anger at you because you represent the reason she's upset. You've been dead. She thought you were gone forever. Now you're alive. Nobody told her. You just kind of showed up, and you're working with the people she was convinced were evil a year ago. She's forced to process a lot of problematic information very rapidly, and she has a very human response. Kaiden feels a little less interesting because he kind of is more understanding in that moment, and that while that is a positive quality, it feels unrealistic.
Yeah, I think in that situation too, either you're talking about Ashley or you're talking about Kaiden, I think the main thing to pull away from that is that both the Alliance are manipulating them because they want to find out more about you, and then the Elusive Man is manipulating you in that situation too. Both of you should be upset, but not at each other. Mm-hmm. Yet you're forced into this situation and that's the dynamic characters that we have. But again, that's why I'm saying is that interaction with Kaiden needs to be significant and needs to be special because of all these moving parts. His personality just doesn't give that to me. So if it was me ranking, I'd give him a straight up D. He does have a usefulness. If he was a Vanguard, I'd consider a B. I would play him differently.
In D tier as well.
Yeah, I put him higher than you. His moment in his past when he kills the instructor, I believe, it's not a surprise that later in life he suddenly becomes very reticent to be angry, to be too bold. When he knows that the one time that he let himself go completely, he killed someone. As a teenager, I think, or possibly even just as a child. So it's not really a surprise that he turns out the way he does. He essentially seems to be suffering under just a form of PTSD for the entire series, which is an odd thing to have as this character that he starts with it. So you never really get to see him as an excitable character, as someone who's really happy to be there. I think he's just more interesting than some others, but not that interesting. So for me, he's somewhere between a B and a C, and I'll give him a B.
Okay.
I think that story is tremendously interesting, but it's inconsistent with his decision to join the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You've just said he lost control and he killed somebody and he regrets it. I'm gonna go be a soldier. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Go be a shopkeeper or something.
I'd imagine it would be somewhere between. This is just how I would try and justify it. It would be somewhere in between. Well, I've already got this damn implant in my head, which is giving me cluster headaches every day of my life. I've got to use this for something. And the Alliance is known for being quite rigid. Maybe he needs that, just that hierarchical sense in his life. I think that's how you would try and sort of square that circle. But at the same time, yeah, you could very easily lean to, you just need to get out of this world. Because clearly you're not made for this. But I wonder if they would have let him out, bearing in mind he's just killed someone.
Yeah.
This is really a question. I don't know the answer. And that could well be addressed somewhere. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's not really 100% clear if he wasn't already in a program that was grooming him toward the Alliance anyway. So him signing up may have been a natural reaction, no more different than, getting your driver's license, because he got the L2 implant and the L3, but I don't get the impression that his family was paying for any of this. I get the impression that he was part of a camp of biotic individuals, kind of like Grissom Academy maybe, and they're able to provide all that for him, and he just kind of floats into the Alliance's recruiting camp.
Space communism.
Yeah.
But Hannah's comment nearly didn't go in my ear, and it processed a second later.
I mean, but even if you put B or C, I think that still would move him into the C territory if we have two Ds, and so whatever you say.
Yeah, I think honestly, if we look at him across the board, he does seem to just be quite average. And isn't that a C?
If we sort of think about that,
Well,
then yeah.
I mean, he's average if he plays through all 3 games, but he dies in the first one. That he's below average in ME2 and 3.
You know what? I wouldn't disagree with that. If for some heretical reason Kaiden doesn't make it past Mass Effect 1, he's a D. Possibly an E.
Let me say
that
this.
dull.
If he is nuked and he shows up in 3, I'll give him an A.
Oh yeah.
Is this humanity 3.0 all over again? Was
Exactly.
Kaiden the hero all along?
He did something special.
Well, there we go. We've got 1 B, 2 Ds. I think we can call that an average for a C for Kaiden.
C for Kaiden. Yeah. So the next one that we're going to go over is Ashley. Ashley, because she's really the second one you run into outside of Kaiden, and it's going to be a very similar conversation. The only thing I'll say about Ashley that I haven't already said before, see the Mass Effect 1 episode. I go on for way too long about Ashley, but the main thing about her is that she's a soldier, like a full soldier. So she has some abilities, but the flexibility that I use her for, because she's got a ton of hit points. She's probably got, she definitely has more than Wrex. But you can put all of her points in her soldier abilities, not necessarily marksmanship and the other things she has. I mean, you can if you want, but the advantage of dumping everything there is she's basically a meat shield who's able to use those high-powered rifles and everything else with great effect. So having her is a little bit more focused, and so that's why I kind of like her in especially Mass Effect 1 more so than Kaiden, because whereas he is watered down, she's a little bit more concentrated with that type of power that she has. But anyway, that's how I approach her.
I think for myself, I've always found Wrex to be a little bit more tanky than Ashley, so I don't like her for that so much. I think, like you said, I believe Ashley has more hit points, but it's that combination of that light regen that Wrex has and the barrier. So I've always found him to be a bit more useful if I just want a pure tank. But I don't think anyone hits harder than Ashley does. I'm pretty sure she is, if you just need to cut through people, she's going to be the best of the best. So on the battlefield, I find her massively useful. If I'm not playing with minimum Shepard as a Vanguard or the soldier tech combination or pure soldier, I'm almost certainly going to have Ashley in just because I want that violence from Ashley, the ability to just fight. And I also tend to find that I enjoy having her in the squad. I think she tends to have interesting dialogue. She tends to be someone who is just pleasant to have. And the only reason I wouldn't have her in my team nowadays if I play is I probably have heard it all before. But if I was going back in with fresh ears, even my first playthrough, my second playthrough, I think Ashley would almost be an ever-present in my squad. It's just a shame she doesn't get out of Mass Effect 1.
I definitely agree with her role in combat. I feel like she is, if you are not playing as a soldier, she's your best option for just violence, as Cobb put it. She's tanky, and beyond Mass Effect 1, she has access to full weapons, which is not true for every other companion. So she can do whatever, she can fill whatever pure combat role you need her to fill. And you can kind of arrange points on how you want her to behave. So I feel like in terms of utility, she's much higher for me than Kaiden was. But in terms of personality and interactions with the rest of the crew, I feel like she's a little unappealing to me just because it all feels familiar, because she represents a human point of view, which I already have. That's what I am. Not to say that she doesn't have interesting conversations. She definitely does. It's just the points she brings up are things I would think myself. So I'm not getting kind of unique input from her. She's just kind of voicing thoughts that I might have had. And after the first time, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, actually, is the idea that she doesn't have an interesting perspective. She's really just another you. And her real joy that you can have is just that combat utility.
Mm-hmm.
I think, oddly enough, her imperfection as a person is what I like about her dialogue with others. that low-level latent hostility that's almost always just there, that undercurrent, that it keeps conversations interesting. But it would be hard to argue that maybe we will just enjoy more the conversations between Wrex and Garrus and Tali, because they're just going to give us perspectives that we don't otherwise get. The main thing that I love about Ashley, and weirdly enough, it's what means she can't leave Mass Effect 1, but also boosts her up. I think Kaiden suffers if he doesn't leave Mass Effect 1, because, like I say, all of his interesting stuff happens later. Ashley, I think you can give her the most perfect end, if you will, in Mass Effect 1. You can have her, as briefly summed up, a space racist. You can have her sacrifice her life in this spontaneous, desperate, intergalactic alliance, essentially with Solarians on the ground who are also desperately trying to hold on. So she emerges as this racist character who then gives her life with these people she would never have seen herself giving her life to. And she also gets to redeem her family name. That family name that was always going to be judged based upon the actions of her grandfather. Put those two things together and I think she almost has the perfect death.
There's certainly a poetic justice there, although I think it feels almost like she comes to this revelation that the way she saw other races is not accurate, and her reward for that is a bomb. Just kind of seems a little counterintuitive that you're almost punishing her for realizing her past mistakes and growing beyond them.
Ah, you've grown. Now go.
Yeah.
So if we look at it from the space racist point of view, the
That's
Solarians,
something I was prepared to do today.
The Solarians tried to neuter the Krogan. Ashley says, "I can do you one better," because that was a facility to create Krogan and to bypass the genophage. So she says, "Nah, I'm going to take it out." That's how like a lot of people would say it. Was like, no, Ashley just hated them so much she just nuked them. Okay.
I can't remember her dialogue in the moments before that leading up to the conversation with Wrex. Does she support destroying the facility in that moment because the Krogans would be dangerous?
No.
Or
No. It basically goes by, you tell her in advance to watch your back. And it has to do with your relationship with her. She may not do it if she's doesn't have a relationship with you. And I don't mean like a special relationship. I just, as long as you've talked to her and done her dialogue, I believe. I don't know if it unlocks it if you don't. I do believe that it's locked behind your relationship with her. You have to trust her. She has to trust you. And when you have that moment with Wrex and you don't shoot, Wrex is going to kill you if you don't. But it doesn't do that. It doesn't do the womp, 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 womp. She will shoot him for you.
Looks like things are a bit of a mess.
Yeah. I wouldn't be so worried if it wasn't for Wrex. Looks like he's gonna blow a gasket.
You think I should go talk to him?
It wouldn't hurt. Well, it might actually. Just do it carefully.
I'll be careful. But be ready, just in case.
This isn't right, Shepard. If there's a cure for the genophage, we can't destroy it.
Calm down, Wrex. I'm not the enemy here. Saren's the one you should be mad at.
Really? Saren created a cure for my people. You want to destroy it. Help me out here, Shepard. The lines between friend and foe are getting a little blurry from where I stand.
I shouldn't have to explain that to you, Wrex.
Indulge me. I've been loyal to you so far. Hell, you did more for me than my family ever did. But if I'm going to keep following you, I need to know we're doing it for the right reasons.
All you need to know is that I'm giving you an order to fall in line.
So that's it. All this time, and that's all I get from you. How can you not see what this means to the Krogan? This base can't be destroyed. I won't allow it. You bitch.
Not today, friend.
Thanks, Chief. He just wasn't gonna listen to reason.
I kind of figured.
Wait, what? Did you just kill him, Chief?
Commander's orders.
Yeah, but I just can't believe it.
Oddly enough, her shooting Rex for me is the reason Ashley died in my first playthrough. That's why I decided she would be sacrificed on the planet, because she just gunned down Rex in front of me. It was a pretty grim moment flying away and realizing that you just lost your 2 tanks. And one of them was the pettiness.
I love that that's your takeaway. Is you've lost your 2 tanks. It's not you've lost friends, you've lost people you cared about. It's like, oh, now I'm gonna be so fragile in future combat.
It's a good job Shepard's a soldier, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we got the Mako. Mako, we're good. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I like in Ash for, here's the thing. I've always said Ash is alliance first, and she definitely is. And you can make the argument Kaiden is too, but I think, like I said, Kaiden more or less fell into his role. He didn't do anything special necessarily. He is special, but he didn't do anything necessarily special. Ashley, on the other hand, has had to scratch tooth and nail just to get what she's already received, and she becomes a Spectre. And it is at that point where she owes no alliance to the Alliance necessarily, which she is still part of the Alliance, just like Shepard is. But at that moment when she has to choose, am I going to listen to Shepard, who has been with Cerberus this whole time, or do I listen to someone like Udina, who I'm supposed to be on the council protecting? So I would rank her, for me, an A. I want to give her an S, but there's enough there that I can't.
What about you, Banana?
So I am torn between a B and C tier for Ashley, just because I feel like a lot of her growth is kind of an alternative Shepard story. And I'm playing the Shepard story. If I want that version, I'll just play that version. So I would say she definitely has an interesting story. It's just not separate enough from Shepard's that I'm particularly concerned with it. So I would probably put her in a B tier.
And I'm going to fall much more in line with Banana. I think she's good, but I think she's on a similar level to Kaiden. I see them very much as 2 sides of the same. Yeah, 2 sides of the same coin. So I would also go with a B for Ashley.
Okay. So with one...
So B plus.
Yeah, so 1 A and 2 Bs, it's a solid B. So that's where she's going to land, is a B.
For me, the point, however, wasn't between B and C. It was really between B and A. I think I prefer her slightly over Kaiden.
Yeah. I mean...
Well, I put Kaiden in D, so
yeah, you too.
Yeah. We have...
Plus, she knew not to stand next to the nuke. It's got to elevate her.
Points for practicality.
Yeah.
We have next, I think, my chosen lieutenant in any situation. You name me the situation, I want him as my other squad leader, and that's going to be Garrus.
James.
Finally, someone speaks the truth.
Yeah.
We haven't had an S tier yet. We're not skipping all the way to James. Okay, so slow
Keep some
down.
anticipation.
I just, since you're such a fan of the space racist, I thought we were going humans first.
Yeah. So I think Garrus, what's great about him is that he is unique in a group of unique companions. He's uniquely unique, and doesn't matter what you do. If you end up being full renegade, if you end up being full paragon, you decide, hey, look, it was a good idea to blow the Batarians to hell. He's right by your side. He's a Shepard truther. There's nobody more important in the galaxy to him, whether you have a romance or not with him. Garrus is your biggest cheerleader. And I don't think that endears me to say that he's like an S tier when at the end of the day. But there's a lot of endearing qualities about him that even when you have nobody, you're always going to have Garrus. So there's a lot to be said about that.
That almost turns me off him a little bit. That you almost don't have to work for Garrus's love at that point. I want someone who is willing to talk against Shepard, tell Shepard what he's doing wrong. I want someone who has that rigid moral foundation that they then work around, rather than Garrus, where it feels more like he's a blank canvas and he's just going to be what you need and want him to be. So oddly enough, the fact that he will always find Shepard to be in the right almost turns me off a little bit.
It's funny because I just gave this argument against Ashley and now I'm giving it for Garrus. But the fact that Garrus also goes through this kind of growth where he decides the role he wants to play as far as Paragon or Renegade, I think that really works in his favor because, I mean, I kind of boring, almost always end up doing a almost purely Paragon playthrough. But in those moments where I get to influence Garrus's growth, Garrus gets to be a Renegade. And I get to have that kind of sounding board of the two options available to me. I know Paragon is not always the solution. And I know that Renegade is not always the correct solution. So if I'm going to be the boring Paragon, I'm going to want somebody in my team who's willing to break those rules. And for me, that's Garrett.
And there's an interesting little set of things in Mass Effect 1 where they're not presented like it is in Mass Effect 2 and 3. I think what they were trying to do in Mass Effect 1 with him was more evident in how you have your reactions in 2 and 3. He'll have a very informal conversation with you about C-Sec and his father. And, you know, you have the opportunity to tell him, no, I think everybody under me needs to follow my rules. And it doesn't matter if you feel like you have to go on a vengeance streak, you're going to do what I say. And you get to hear his reaction in accordance with what little information he knows about you. But then he unlocks some information about things that frustrated him that he was trying to accomplish while he was with C-Sec. And one of them was the quest with Dr. Hart. So it's interesting. You can have a full Paragon playthrough, and then when you do the Dr. Hart mission, you have the opportunity to let him live, shoot him, or let Garrus do it. And even if you do play a full Paragon, I'd be hard-pressed to not let Garrus go ahead and handle his stuff.
I let Garrus shoot him every time.
Of course. It's not even a question.
But you see what I'm saying is that you can do that with Garrus, and he's will be fine with it either way. And that's the kind of thing that I'm saying is that there's an avenue of storytelling that you have almost an ace in your hole with Garrus every time. So even if he's coming from a certain, I don't know, Garrus, I don't know if that's the right thing for you as a healthy personality going forward. Hey, he's always going to be on your side no matter what. So you can let him do certain things, even if it's out of your character, and you just think that it plays better for it.
I don't know if this is going to be good for him going forward, but we can use him that way. You're sounding a wee bit psychotic, my love. Just a wee bit. I think for me, what I've really found interesting about Garrus is the fact that he comes from, well, he's Turian, and they're notoriously disciplinary and very strict, very sort of by the book, and he's not. And just what those years that he had on the Citadel, surrounded by others and different races, the effect that must have had on him to make him who he is when you already meet him in Mass Effect 1, to actually make a malleable Turian, who weirdly doesn't seem to consider themselves to be a model of a Turian.
Right.
But at the same time, is clearly the best of them all.
And they know it. They know it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I absolutely adore Garrus.
In Mass Effect 3, the admirals are saluting him. And
yes.
And Shep notices that. He says, how up the tree are you nowadays, Vakarian? Valkorian is a Darth in Star Wars The Old Republic that I've been playing a lot of lately. So Vakarian. I'm sorry. I'm getting my V's mixed up. But anyway.
Get your shit together.
Targaryen. Got it.
Fucking amateur hour.
How far up the chain are you nowadays, Vakarian? And he says, let's not talk about all that. And he's right. He's very humble when it comes to that stuff. But that's what I'm saying is that the Turians know his level of abilities. And so and that's the nice thing about being a Turian in the Turian world is that you get punished for nepotism. There's an actual quest related to that. and they know that, and so they only promote the people that they feel can fill that role.
I think that's another reason why Garrus is so beloved, is because Garrus is far and away, in terms of story development, one of your most capable companions. If Shepard is not around, Garrus almost kind of becomes the de facto leader just because he's good at it. He's pragmatic when he needs to be. He recognizes the values that other people bring to the team. He could step into the role of the main character very easily, and it just makes him that much more appealing as a character, because people kind of gravitate to very capable individuals, and I don't know that we really meet too many people who are more capable than Garrus.
Well, I find that interesting, is the idea of, I wonder how far he actually could have gone if Shepard wasn't there. I wonder to what point having Shepard around forms him and improves him, and to what point it almost holds him back. Because you do see in between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, this time window where Garrus is gone and then he returns, he really goes down a path. He very much becomes that sort of Turian of action. He goes and does something. And then between 2 and 3, in this small time window, he goes and, as you just rightly pointed out, Legion, climbs the ranks in not a very, very long period of time. So I'm almost curious about what his hero story would have been in a world without Shepard, but also, did his hero story require Shepard? I don't know what point that becomes.
Did. Because you see him in CSEC. He's stuck in a job he hates.
Yeah.
That's when he meets Shepard, and he abandons that job because of Shepard. And then in Mass Effect 2, he pisses off an entire planet. Without Shepard, he dies in Mass Effect 2.
He's the best.
And it's not so much that he's not capable of getting out of that situation, it's that he was too ambitious and pissed off too many people at the same time. And now he has people uniting against him. And that is a very special person to get enemies to unite against you.
So it's almost as though if you hadn't had that Shepard arc, he's going to go one of two ways. He's either going to get stuck in that office, or he's going to burn out. Just immediately. He's going to do something too big, too grand, and he's gone.
Yeah, in Mass Effect 3, of course, you have a side role of helping Aria to help you by, getting all the gangs to help you. Well, they're an asset, so you need them. Who is Garrus pissing off? He pissed off all three of them. They're all coming at him. All these organizations that you think are going to be great to help you against the Reapers, yeah, they were all of them against him.
Yeah, but we killed all those people. Yeah, now it's a new fresh batch who has nothing against Garrus.
And on a side note, I've kind of said it before, but for me, I always thought that if you were going to write a story about Mass Effect, like a TV series or something, start with Garrus. That needs to be your first series. You can see almost kind of like this whole good cop, bad cop type thing in space with him, but he's doing these things that are constantly getting frustrated, but you have stories there that you could tell. And so there's a foundation there of telling the Mass Effect world without getting straight into Shepard, because that's the problem with a lot of these ports, because they try to do too much too soon. So just focus on Garrus and the quests of Garrus or something like that. And then, of course, the last episode, as it fades out, you could actually have him talking to that other Turian, expressing his frustration with Saren and stuff. And then you see Shep coming up in the background. And that would be a great, introduction to the next part of that story.
I think, that's absolutely it. You need to prioritize Garrus, because very few companions have the same impact on Shepard as Garrus. Mass Effect as a trilogy is very much the two of them shaping each other and becoming better versions of themselves as a result of their interactions. So without Garrus, I feel like the trilogy becomes maybe not a bad game, but mediocre, forgettable. I feel like their dynamic really, really enhances the stories.
He was the only character who, when I was playing Mass Effect 3 for the first time, and I was a few hours in, I was worried if they weren't going to come back. Almost everyone else I didn't really mind, but that had me concerned.
Well, you killed Kaiden, Ashley, and Wrex, so...
I didn't have many others left.
Yeah. You know, and you kind of mentioned something before too, like he could step in if something happened to Shep. I could totally see in Mass Effect 2, even with the elusive man saying, "Look, Shep's gone," and they're supposed to have gone straight to Miranda. I bet you Miranda makes a fuss about it, but at the end of the day, they're going to offer the job to Garrus. I mean, I have no doubt that that's what would happen. But yeah, I think for me, even though I've been praising him quite a bit, I don't see him in S tier. Again, it has to do with the Sentinel stuff and the way I use him. He dies pretty fast in my playthroughs because he like gets moved up almost like a tank, but he doesn't have those tank numbers. So he puts himself in a position where his powers are on a pretty high, they're not a very fast cooldown. So if he doesn't hit, he's going to die. And then you're going to be in a worse position because if you play on harder difficulties, it's really hard to keep Garrus with you at all times, unless you have the Dr. Hart mission, in which case he's got to come with you. Because you can do the mission, you just don't get the special dialogue, and it just doesn't make sense to take Garrus with you for that. So for me, he's an A.
It's funny because I don't bring Garrus along a lot in combat, but I can't imagine the Mass Effect story without him. And I think the reason I don't bring him along in combat is kind of what you said, because you and I play on Insanity difficulty overwhelmingly. But I feel like Insanity difficulty is our own little challenge. So to evaluate Garrus's abilities based on that difficulty feels a little unfair. And I have Garrus as an S tier. Just, if I'm playing on a lower difficulty, there's nothing I can't overcome with Garrus.
I don't think I have a clearer S tier. It's Garrus all the way. I think very much Banana almost summed it up with the idea that the series is about the two of them. So for me, Garrus, clear S tier.
Yeah, I think we would get a lot of people upset.
Yeah,
if
how's
we
it feel to
didn't
be
say
wrong,
S.
Legion?
You're falling apart.
Well, I mean, I'd say he's closer to S than he is to an A, baseline A. So he's an A+.
But we don't do A pluses.
Right.
Yeah.
So I definitely think
That's
that
ridiculous.
yeah, no,
Round it up. Round it up.
The next one we'll go over now is a little known guy named Wrex. Wrex, the big red Krogan. It's a really interesting time when you first find him and meet him. He's arguing with C-Sec, pushing them, about to get in a fight in their facility. If you just see it as a scene, you know, it may just go right over your head because you don't know anything from anything if you've never played Mass Effect before. You don't know really about C-Sec, even though there's information everywhere. You don't really know what they do. Maybe you know that they're the police. But you got to remember the size of the Citadel is huge. So they have a big regulatory group, and you're in their headquarters. He's telling you that he's going to commit a felony to C-Sec. And you're like, hey, look, we have same interests. He's like, if you're going to get him, then I can join you too. And, you know, it's basically comes down to that. So he's quick to want to be with you. But after a while, you really realize you want him with you. He's extremely versatile, especially early on. If you have him in a squad, the risk of death is greatly minimized with Wrex on your team. Like I said, especially early on, he's just really good at everything, and he's got those tank numbers, and if you can find him some heavy armor, you can't really put it on him just yet. You have to. That's the weird thing about Mass Effect 1 is that you have to like put points in those, and then you can wear it. And
It just never made sense to me that you need to invest in these characters in order to give them heavy armor, which is like the whole point of the character.
So if they had some balance there, like for instance, if I could put heavy armor on Kaiden, but I have to work to get to those numbers, that makes sense to me. But for Krogan, he should automatically have that and have to work harder to get some of his biotic stuff unlocked, you know, things like that.
I feel like Ashley and Wrex should absolutely have access to heavy armor immediately, and Garrus and Kaiden should have access to heavy armor eventually.
Well, even if Ash doesn't have access to heavy, you could give her immediate access to like marksmanship. So that way she shoots well and doesn't,
I mean, she's a trained soldier, and you get her as a blank slate. It's like, What did they teach you?
Yeah, so we'll talk about Wrex. Like I said, I think he's a great character from the moment you meet him, and he only becomes more and more interesting because whereas everybody else is like, "Hello, Shepard, how are you doing?" Or Ashley's like, "Yes, sir," "No, ma'am," whatever. Wrex is like, "What do you want?" "Goodbye."
Let's go kill
All right.
someone.
So he's very interesting. He's not standoffish. He will have a conversation with you. He's not like Sten from Dragon Age. He's willing to talk.
I feel like immediately you see Rex's appeal. Wrex is absolutely confident in his combat abilities. He's picking a fight with C-Sec. They ask him, "Do you want me to arrest you?" And he says, "I want you to try." Like, that is immediately endearing. And he is unabashedly himself. He never fakes anything. So he will tell you, he'll answer your questions and give you the exact information you were looking for. And he might tell you that you're a piece of shit for asking in the first place. There's very few people in the world of Mass Effect who are as straightforward and honest as Wrex is. And I feel like you meet him and he's this gruff, kind of almost cold seeming character. But if you go through his whole story, if you find his family's armor, if you kind of work through the concerns on Vermeer, he becomes almost as big a fan of you as Garrus. And I think that character growth, to say this is somebody who is not going to let you take the easy route to earning his respect, and you still can earn his respect, that's a tremendous quality in a person, to say that they're going to give you an accurate assessment of yourself.
Yeah, I am 100% on board. I absolutely adore Wrex. He is one of my very, very favorite characters in the series. And that evolution that he goes through, I think, is one of the most well done. And what I love about Wrex is that I almost feel as though you're seeing the second half of his story. So you have Wrex, as far as I can tell, when he was younger, he may have been more like we leave him when we're done with the whole story. Because I believe he was a leader on his planet back in the day. And eventually he was betrayed. He's someone who lost faith in his own people.
Yeah, his father tried to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
He set him up.
I mean, it doesn't get much worse, right? He lost faith in his own people. He ends up as this brutal, brutal cynic. I don't mean brutal in the sense of violent, although also yes, but just the depth of the cynicism that exists within him towards his own people. But he still has down within his soul this deep, and it's his motivation. I think almost the entire series, if not most of it. His belief in the unjustness of what was done to his people by the Solarians, his belief in the grossness of the genophage, and that constant motivation is always burning within him. So even when he's lost faith in his own people, that's still there. And then when we, I believe, as Shepard, start showing him that there is hope, there is good, that push combined with that moral foundation that he already had within that didn't go away, turns him into a character who I think does the one thing that I really want with my secondary protagonists. He has his own story. His story doesn't revolve around you. He goes off and he does his thing. I think, if I remember correctly, we spent a lot of the 3 games without him as a companion. Because he's got his own stuff going on, his own stuff that he needs to do.
He's the classic BioWare Baldur's Gate companion. He has his story, and we are part of a world where he revolves in his own little world. Sometimes we circle each other, but
yes,
he's the classic BioWare Baldur's Gate companion. Has that deep arc. Whether you're there for their adventure or not, they're going to get through it.
Yeah, I think Rex's most impressive character growth occurs in Mass Effect 2, when you see him adopt this role as a leader, to put up with all of the bureaucratic bullshit of leading his people in the direction he sees as best for them. That's not the character you meet in Mass Effect 1. And to think that the person you meet in Mass Effect 1 would make that sacrifice to become this person that they seem to hate in Mass Effect 1, because of the pragmatism, because of the benefit they can provide to their people by giving them the guidance from their perspective. It's a tremendous growth for Wrex to go from that cynic who thinks his people seem beyond saving to become the person that saves them, or at least works in that direction.
It also plays with our preconceptions as well. If you present me the cast of Mass Effect 1 immediately in front of my eyes and I've never seen them before, just based upon how he looks and how he sounds, I'm almost going to assume he's the one with the least possibility for growth. And when you tell me that he's the tanky character, you look at him, of course he is. Of course he is. There's no shock. And then he goes through almost the most, inverted commas, human journey of anyone in the entire cast.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. Yeah. The thing about Wrex, I think it is on Virmire where something does click. He had always felt a priority to his people, but he would get frustrated because they were all diminished numbers. It's not that he's frustrated with the Krogan not taking over the galaxy. That doesn't frustrate him. He's frustrated at his own people deciding to choose a path of destruction for themselves. He says he doesn't blame it on the genophage. He just knows that the genophage exists and his people are choosing to become mercenaries. They're not focused on their internal growth. And that doesn't mean just by reproduction, but just the growth of the culture. And so he's always frustrated by those decisions that his people make. And so when he's on Virmire, he sees an opportunity. He says, wait a minute, Saren is actually bypassing the genophage. Why wouldn't I be on board with this? And you have that moment to either talk him out, and that's why Wrex has to die if you don't agree with that. If you say, no, Wrex, you have to fall in line or else. And if you kind of choose the path of the renegade and either kill him or have Ash kill him, he has to go, because that story can't continue with him pulling the puppet strings behind the screen. So he has to either be with you or just can't exist. So if he's with you, though, something triggers. He does see the bigger picture for his people, because if they do bypass the genophage, they're essentially slaves of the Reaper. Well, we don't know it's the Reaper, of course, but we think it'll be slaves of Saren. And that's what they are. They're mindless husks, basically, in Krogan form. And that is what Wrex realizes. And so somebody who is projected as a mercenary, which he kind of is, quickly turns into a non-mercenary action. He's trying to defend his people.
I think that's a really nice thought, is what you're mentioning about him and the other Krogan. It's that idea, I think, that he's so frustrated that the other Krogan are proving the galaxy right. They're proving that there was, outside of a bold, just grand objective version, he's proving that there is a real subjective morality behind the genophage because of the actions of his own people. That they choose destruction. They don't choose culture. They don't choose growth in their borders. They choose only to continue pressing outwards. They choose only to engage in the most violent of professions. They choose for that to be who they are and what they're defined by. And you can really feel it just in his character. And I think it's wonderful if you do what I did and accidentally get Wrex murdered. So that in Mass Effect 2, you can actually see what's going to happen when someone like Reeve is in charge. And you don't have that more tempered version of the Krogan, the Wrex is. Right. And it's not always a huge change, but just some of the dialogue, the more sinister air that it takes on, the different way they speak about why Krogans need to get past the genophage. I think for Wrex, it's more of just a moralistic principle. It's not right for someone else to choose this. Whereas for Reeve, it's not right that we're being held down. It's a very different way to look at the same problem.
I think there are a number of players who first played Mass Effect 2 and were introduced to the series through Mass Effect 2 when it came out. Because even then, the graphics between 1 and 2 are just huge. Yeah. So those who have played 2 and never played 1, there's a good chance they never even knew who Wrex was. So it's really interesting that coming full circle, a lot of people do now. But you got to remember, for the longest time, it was kind of like, who's Wrex, right? Who's this guy that you're talking about? Because there was a lot of people who got into Mass Effect 2 and never knew of Wrex because you didn't have that option.
I think it's funny that you said when Wrex is facing that decision on Virmire, he doesn't blame the genophage for his people's behavior after the genophage is introduced. Because from my point of view, I think he absolutely does, but it's not the genophage's fault that they're making those decisions. It's the genophage has put them in a position where they are resigned to their fate. And he knows that his people can't make the decisions they should be making in that position. So in my mind, Wrex's goal is always to eliminate the threat of the genophage, to give his people the freedom to be what they choose to be, because now they feel like the universe has already decided what we are. We just have to be that. And Wrex sees that resignation and says, if I can eliminate that obstacle, if I can get rid of the genophage, it opens up opportunities for them to say, no, I'm going to be what I choose to be. And that opportunity doesn't exist as long as this external control is always holding them down. And I think that's where Com was going, is it's not so much this shouldn't happen to us as much as this shouldn't happen to anyone, because you're destroying the freedom of a sentient race to exist and better themselves because you've decided they're not worth saving. And I think that is where Wrex's temperance in Mass Effect 2 comes from, is to say, our goal should not be to rebel against the people who are holding us down. Our goal should be to prove them wrong. We need to be better than we are and show them that they've made a mistake this whole time. And unfortunately, it kind of seems like you need to eliminate that threat in order to have the opportunity. So it becomes this kind of catch-22 where you can't prove them wrong until they accept that they're wrong. But I think that kind of almost hopeless struggle that Wrex is always engaged in is one of the things that makes him such an engaging character.
And I think he is that next step of Krogan, because you got to remember that the Solarians are the ones who uplifted the Krogan. And I think the BioWare writers were really intelligent when they were looking at it from that point of view, because what have the Reapers been doing? They've been leaving civilizations behind that aren't advanced enough, and then they let them grow for the next 50,000 years, and then they can harvest them. So I'm pretty sure the Krogan were on their map. So what did the Quarians do? Not the Quarians, the Solarians. What did the Solarians do? They basically amplified. Yeah, they amplified some evolution there, and they basically played God. They played Reaper. I mean, I don't really know how to correlate the two. That's obviously they're not the same.
Let's not just make those the same term.
Yeah, but they're basically put them in a position to be spacefaring, and now they're not culturally advanced enough to know how to responsibly handle that, because the tech has advanced their culture. Because the whole reason why Tuchanka is a mess is because they nuked the whole planet. That's kind of where the Krogan were. And so then they become uplifted in this inherently violent culture who knows enough to get them into trouble. Now they're worried about them taking over the galaxy. He's the one who has the level head. He's the one who looks beyond. Yeah, he's playing chess when all the other Krogan are playing checkers. That's basically what I'm saying. So I definitely see Wrex if I don't ever get to play with him again. I just know his story. But the Citadel comes along, and suddenly, if you do have him in your party, he's immediately the Wrex you remember, and he's just clearing a path for you. It's on easy mode. Even if you're on Insanity, you're on easy mode suddenly because you have Wrex in the party. It's like, it's a fun watch. I mean, because you're doing your part, but it's almost like it's the Wrex show. So I have him as an S tier because you do get to use him again, and it's a very impactful DLC. So,
Banana?
I think I would have had him at an S tier if not for Mass Effect 2 and the majority of Mass Effect 3, him being kind of external. He does have his own story, which is wonderful. I love his story, but I think the fact that you're not as closely involved in it throughout Mass Effect 2 and 3 kind of lowers him a little bit in my estimation. I love the character, but I feel like we're not given enough Wrex for me to put him in S tier. So I have him in A tier. Sorry.
For me, as a protagonist, he's S tier. As a companion, he's B. So for this list, I would have him as a B tier, and it's really only for that. It's just the amount of time we spend with him, how much he has his own story. The moments when he's with us, he's just the best. It's purely a reflection of the amount of time he spends with us. So for me, it's a B. I did just want to very briefly actually just jump in with an enormous praise and thumbs up for the addition of Eve, that female Krogan, as a character. I think she's absolutely outstanding. And it is nice to see that there are other Krogan who are more in line with Rex's ambitions, so you realize that he is certainly a trailblazer. He's certainly ahead of many in some way, but it's nice to see that the Krogan aren't this monolithic block exclusively of warmongers. There are these others within the society who are a bit more thoughtful and reflective. And you're having almost this reformation in their society taking place.
And even advocates for Wrex, because she says any other Krogan would do this, but don't tell him I told you, but he's exactly what our people need. So she even says that.
Yeah, I think that's
when we were first planning the podcast, I had said the same thing about Banana. Like, just don't tell him, but we need Banana.
Well, I can't wait to prove you wrong. I feel like I already have, but we'll definitely get there if we haven't reached that point yet. But no, I think you're absolutely right. The introduction of Eve and those statements she makes about the direction that Wrex wants to take the Krogan race show that it gives you that little bit of hope that Wrex can actually impact that change. He can actually convince people to see the benefit of his ideology and work in that direction. And without getting some traction with someone of importance, it does, again, kind of feel like that hopeless cause that he's just always in pursuit of.
Yeah.
So I said S, but Banana said A?
I did.
And then Com said B. So A. So he's an A.
So I'm right. I just can't wait until I'm way off on one of these.
Well, it won't be this next one. The next one we're going to go over is Tali. So that's an S. Can we just move on?
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd all enjoy talking about
Yeah, we can
Tali,
talk about Tali, but I think it's an S, and I'm not even going to budge from that. So
I'm going to spoil you in advance and say not an S.
Like S+.
S plus.
No, we're going the other way, I'm afraid.
All right, please elaborate as to why you're wrong.
Enlighten all of us.
Mass Effect 1. Tali is the most boring of the companions you have with you. She's the beige
disconnect
Power
right
Ranger.
now.
She has almost nothing of interest taking place. And I think this largely comes down to the realization by the developers that they weren't going to make Tali a romanceable figure, at least at this point. So I think they surrendered some of her dialogue that might have been meant to be more endearing and might have been meant to more pull on your heartstrings somewhat. And they used her essentially as an exposition dump for you. She spends a lot of time essentially reading you the manual of the universe. If you didn't have time to open up the codex and listen to those entries, don't worry, because Tali's got you covered. And for me, that sours Tali. Her performance in Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, oh so different. Oh so different. For me in those, she becomes she's one of the characters who really, along with Wrex, gives you a window onto an interesting part of the universe. I don't think Garrus does that. The interesting thing about Garrus isn't that he was in CSEC. It's not that he was it's not that he's a Turian. With Wrex, I think a lot of his charm comes from the fact that he's a Krogan, and then the genophage around that. Tali is that window on the Quarian and the Geth. And everything around her story now revolves around this enormous war, which I think probably hits the themes of the game more than any other conflict does. Essentially, it's the simplest way to sum up Mass Effect. Not themes, really, but if you want to sum up the narrative, the artificial life versus biological life, it's there. In Tali. She's personifying it. She suffers from her Mass Effect 1 presentation, and the fact that she is very literally and metaphorically hiding behind this mask. She's almost too timid, too coy for me to give her an S. The worst
Alright.
part is most of what I just said almost sounded like reasons to give her an S. It's really Mass Effect
Yeah.
1 that pulls it.
I think her introduction to Mass Effect 1, you see her as she's your interface to Quarians. You know nothing of Quarians outside of Tali. And Tali's struggle is not a new one. They've been displaced from their home for a long time. And at that point, I feel like for Tali, everyone knows. She's not going to explain her situation to you. And if she were to explain to her situation to you, it would feel like she's just complaining. She's just whining about not having a home. The entirety of Tali in Mass Effect 1 is, I have this goal. I want to restore my people's home. I want to give it back to them. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm on my pilgrimage to find information that could be useful to the flotilla and get us back to that goal. I'm not going to share more than I need to with you because you're not going to care. It's not your home. If I whine about the fact that we are displaced people for the entirety of Mass Effect 1, you're going to kick me off the ship. So I'm going to only present to you the ways that I am useful to you. And then when I realize that I can trust you, I'm going to drop the mask. I'm going to let you see all of the stuff that I was struggling with through Mass Effect 1, but didn't tell you because it wasn't your problem. But once you establish that connection, once Tali knows you're on her side, the mask falls away and you see everything. And I think that Mass Effect 1 is that slow burn up to that point where you have to earn her trust.
See, I think for me, Mass Effect 1 isn't the slow burn. It's almost like we haven't found the candle yet. Yeah, it's like we're just desperately searching in all the drawers. But 2 and 3, it's beautiful.
If you were, I guess, told the entire time you're on the Citadel that you're a space rat, that you really have no value whatsoever, that you're just coming here and we suspect you that you're always going to be like stealing from us or something, they're the most diminished group in the entire group of civilizations on the Citadel. They're always put down, even in front of CSEC. CSEC doesn't care. You know, they're basically discriminated against by everybody. That's when she runs into Shep. And Shep sees it for what it is, you know, very objective about it. Oh, you have information about Saren. I need it, you know. And so when other people are, you know, coming at her, she's able to hold her own. You know, she slaps the guy in the hand. It's like, no, we didn't agree to that. Yeah. And then you step in because they want to, you know, have the fight. But Tali, as far as a squad mate, I don't have it. I have more trouble deciding where to put her points because she's useful everywhere. In Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, I don't know where to put them. Like, I really want to put extra in health for her because she mainly is a shotgun specialist. Give me my engineer who's a shotgun specialist. Thank you. So she's immediately she's a great combat person when it comes to fighting, you know, the weapons. And she's got great abilities with the drones. I mean, she is so infinitely versatile. And so she doesn't have a drone, obviously, in 1. But again, I have a hard time finding, but, you know, again, if you're not playing an engineer or full tech person yourself, you can dump all of your decryption stuff and all that other stuff with her and just keep her with you. And you're good to go. You can open up anything. So, I don't know. Like I said, I still keep her in an S.
I still think the person that Com wants Tali to be in Mass Effect 1 is the Volus ambassador. Because when you meet Tali, you give her very little information, but you give her a chance. And for her, that's enough for her to give you a chance. When you meet the Volus ambassador, he's like, oh, another fucking human. And then proceeds to rant about how privileged you are in the Citadel and how oppressed his people are. If Tali gave you that, you wouldn't let her join the crew.
You crazy? Now I just want the Volus as well.
Oh yeah, no. When you get to Mass Effect 3 and you can play as a Volus, they become fully redeemed in my eyes.
Oh,
But that's only in the multiplayer, which is
remember
not in the
those days.
legendary version. Or legendary
Heady
edition.
days of the multiplayer. Oh.
Well, I'm glad we could all agree that Tali is S tier.
Before moving on, Tali, I do think she has a very interesting aspect to her character, which is I think she's the most childlike.
Yeah.
She's the closest I believe we come to a sort of coming of age story throughout the other characters. Almost everyone else is too capable. Wrex already is incredibly capable. Garrus is already very capable. Ashley very capable, etc., etc. Tali, you actually have a character who is not incapable by any stretch of the imagination, but they're nowhere near where they're going to end up when they start. Certainly not emotionally. And then in gameplay, of course, is a different thing entirely. But you genuinely feel like this person is aging before your very eyes and going from this little citadel street rat figure to where she ends up as almost the example for what a Quarian can be and should be.
Yeah, I think that's
And
why you
that-
can't romance her in one. It's because a lot of those same
Yeah.
things that I think the writers felt about her. So, yeah.
It's also oddly enough why I've never really seen her as a main romance character. Is I almost feel as though it's just they're of different generations. Shepard and
Tali's romance is very
Tali.
cute. It's very cute.
Oh, I've
So,
definitely done it on a
yeah.
playthrough, but it's never felt
Yeah.
inverted commas canon for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I will say, for me, the canon romance, it's funny. A lot of the people's canon romance in their head for Shep is Garrus. I've always seen Garrus with Tali. There's actually a romance arc for those two, and they can share the same proteins. They don't get Tali gets sick, but I mean, they have no problems being with each other.
Worth
If
it.
they-
Only
It's
she gets
worth
sick,
it.
so it's workable.
Well, I mean, if you look at like some of the Turian and Quarian interactions, like you have in Mass Effect 2, for instance, there's like a table where this Turian guy is actually trying to low key flirt with the Quarian because the Quarian's talking about her problems with these dates that she's had, and he's like,
Do
"Oh,
remember
tell me about
Yes.
it." And but that's my point, is that there's a running theme of Turians and Quarians being able to eat the same food, have very similar backgrounds actually. They have to be militaristic first to stay alive. We don't see the Quarians like that, but they're very tough. The commando or like that we meet in Mass Effect 2, they're tough guys. They are really tough. And even who was it? Grunt makes a really weird comment when you first release him. He'll say, humans are weak. You just a little knife blade will take you out. And he starts talking about, the Turians, you get underneath that armor. They're part. Quarians, though, they're tough. And he's not talking about their armor, because he specified the armor difference between Turians and others, and he's just talking about Quarians. So it is interesting that the matriarch in Mass Effect 2 also comments about how the Quarians looked underneath their armor. So there's something unique about them in their native form, and that's why I'm saying is that the Turians and the Quarians seem to have a very similar biology. So
I like to use this to begin with as the sort of guidance down the romance path is, they can eat the same foods. They've had a similar background. If there's any ladies in the chat who like red onions, DMs are open, baby.
where do we have Tali?
I-
We both
I
have
think
S,
there's-
obviously, but where does
I-
Com sit?
I've got A. She's not far off an S. It's just Mass Effect 1.
I think there's one interaction that maybe you didn't see. Not oh, you must have missed this.
Yeah,
But
he clearly
there's one
did.
interaction that you won't see unless you develop Tali's relationship and Legion's relationship. In-game Legion, not this Legion. And if you don't get them both to trust you, and Tali is convinced that you are selling her people out to the Geth, she just ends it.
Yeah.
She sacrifices herself. And like there's no bigger commitment in my mind than her saying, listen, if you're not going to help my people, I give up. I thought we had a very real friendship. I thought it mattered to you whether or not my people continued to exist. And it clearly doesn't. And nothing hurts more than that betrayal. And she just gives up. I think that is another clear example of where you stand with Tali that endears her to me. To say that she trusted you so significantly that betrayal is enough for her to not care about anything anymore.
That is, oddly enough, my canon. Because in my very, very first playthrough, that happened. And it absolutely crushed me.
It's
You can tell
devastating.
not many people got to the end of my game. Like, but that was one of the harder moments.
Everybody died.
So that was one of my attempts to replay outside the full trilogy, was just load up into Mass Effect 2 or load up into Mass Effect 3. And when that happened, I wasn't ready for it because that's not what happened in my first playthrough. My first playthrough, I'd gone through and put all the work in with Tali so that she trusted me. And when I made that reveal to say, we're going to help you end the Geth, she trusted that we were going to make it work. When I went back and just played them separately and she throws herself off a cliff, I was like, all right, we're done. We're not playing this anymore.
Did you also think the ship had just gotten there in time as well?
That would have probably saved the playthrough for me. But when that happened, I was just like, nope, I give up too. We're starting back at Mass Effect 1.
So I think confidently with 2 S's and 1 A that we can put it in an S there.
Bearing in mind, even my A it's hovering an AS. It's not hovering a...
No, that makes sense.
So you're almost right.
Yeah.
I'm mildly wrong.
Partial credit.
Yeah. Liara. That's going to be our last one for Mass Effect 1. And Liara is going to be a real interesting one. She's kind of a unique person in the world of the Asari because she is really young.
What did Saren want with you? Do you know something about the conduit?
Only that it was somehow connected to the Prothean extinction. That is my real area of expertise. I have spent the past 50 years trying to figure out what happened to them.
Just how old are you exactly?
I hate to admit it, but I am only 106.
Damn! I hope I look that good when I'm your age.
A century may seem like a long time to a short-lived species like yours, but among the Asari, I am barely considered more than a child.
She, aside from my opinions about the Asari, she does come on really strong. And I could never tell at the very beginning when I first started playing it whether or not it was just her being grateful, or maybe she's displacing some things because of her mother. I couldn't really place where all this was coming from. And I think it was just that they needed another romance option. And I think nowadays she's kind of considered the canon romance because you can clearly do it in male shepherd or femme shepherd. All doors are open. And it becomes very natural later on. But Liara does confuse me to no end because even in Mass Effect 2, even if you've romanced her, believe it or not, she knows about you. You know, she knows that that Cerberus has had you in your body and they've been experimenting and they continue to experiment. So why would they do that if they didn't somehow have you in some capacity, right? So she does know about you, but she continues to have this, she has a guy on the side who gets trapped by the Shadow Broker. And, you know, that becomes known. But that's kind of what I'm saying is that I don't really see her as the canon romance because of if she knows about you and she has access to intelligence, you know, I get it, but she just confuses me. So for me, she's an easy A tier. Her biotic ability is off the charts. There's no one better than that, in my opinion. You name me the character. It doesn't matter if it's Jack or Miranda or whoever. It's always going to be Liara is the best biotic in the whole game.
I think it's interesting some of the points we brought up talking about Tali as kind of this juvenile within the crew when you are presented with Liara as an adolescent in her race. And her character in Mass Effect 1 is very naive. And I think that's where a lot of that ambiguity in the romance comes from, where she's not particularly experienced in these kinds of interactions. And so she kind of fumbles over herself. And it very much paints her in this juvenile role. And I think one of the points that Com brought up was character growth to say the person that we see in Mass Effect 1 is not the same person that we see in Mass Effect 2 and 3. And for Tali, that was absolutely true. I feel like it's even more true for Liara, because when Liara becomes the Shadow Broker, there's nothing even remotely close to the first interaction you have with Liara there. She is no longer timid. She is no longer under anyone else's control. She's taking control. She is taking control of other people in some ways. She's not even close to the person you meet. And so for me, I am okay with Liara being the Mass Effect 1 canon romance, but that romance can exist beyond Mass Effect 1. As soon as you get into the events of Mass Effect 2, she's not the same person. And the romance doesn't make sense anymore.
I've often wondered about her role with Shepard in particular when you first meet Liara. The impression I've got is that actually outside of you and the Normandy crew who take her very seriously, you take the fact that she's an Asari already, the fact that she's got these decades and decades of experience. Yeah, it's not the centuries or millennia of the others, but it's more than anyone else has got, except probably Wrex, I imagine. But when you think about, yeah, she's young for an Asari. Young for an Asari is old for almost everyone else. So we take her very seriously. But I believe amongst the Asari, she's actually this adolescent figure. She's studying a very, very niche topic, as I understand, this sort of Prothean history and culture. It's not something that important. It's essentially me going back to college and studying history. It's Legion going back and studying literature. You're not being someone who's going to come out of this, go into high up ranks of the Asari military or Asari high command, whatever it might be, and become this important figure. You're destined to be this nose in a book academic character. And then, as you rightly say, by the end, she's the Shadow Broker, which couldn't be any further away from where she starts. And it's another one where, a bit like Garrus, without Shepard there, she doesn't really have that arc taking place. It only takes place as she gravitates around Shepard. I mean, without Shepard, she's almost certainly dead when we think about how you actually find her. Yeah. But assuming that wasn't taking place, she relies thoroughly upon Shepard to have this story. When it comes to the romance, doesn't do it for me. Just doesn't do it for me. There's something about it that feels a bit iffy and a bit off. And I always feel as though the power dynamic between Asari romancing anyone always feels a bit peculiar. But for me,
Legion very happy saying that.
Yeah, it's just not quite right for me. There's not many of them, the romances, oddly enough, in Mass Effect that do it for me. I think a lot of them feel a bit peculiar, but that one in particular, I think she suffers a little from the permanence that her character has. You get the feeling that from the very, very beginning, she was a character who was going to make it all the way through from Mass Effect 1 until the end of Mass Effect 3. There was never a chance that she was going to die, never a chance that something was going to happen to her. In fact, I don't even know if she can die outside of the entire squad wipe.
Well, she's not part of the squad in 2.
Oh shit, no, it wouldn't even work then. Whereas almost everyone else, it feels like there's a moment where they can, where something's going to go terribly wrong and you're going to lose them. Normally you don't. It's normally quite easy to. But I wonder if that's a result of when the game was first designed, if maybe they had more ambitious thoughts for more characters could fall, more characters could die, it'd be more easy. Everyone's story would be a bit more dynamic. They needed someone who was going to be in there from start till finish alongside Shepard. And this led her into being almost the canon romance, that canon secondary figure that was always going to be with you. And I feel she suffers a little bit from a lack of precarity in her story. She's immensely powerful relative to you at the beginning, despite being this young Asari, and by the end, she's the Shadow Broker. She doesn't really go through these weak moments, which almost everyone else does. Garrus's enormous self-doubt, Wrex's complete disgust with his own race, Tali starting off weak. Liara has a bit too much luck in life. She's born on third and thinks she hit a triple.
Yeah, I would say with every other character, there's an explanation as to how they found themselves in combat. With Liara, it doesn't make any sense. And yet she is immediately capable. And that is not an endearing quality. To say that, like, you showed up, you rescued her, and now she is on an even level with the Krogan mercenary who's been fighting for centuries, the Alliance trained soldiers, the CSEC officer in a highly militarized society. They're all on the same tier with this bookworm.
Have you ever been on a flight and then the pilot comes on and he's got a posh British accent? You just think, prick. She's that to me.
Never had that experience.
Even if 99.9% of their relationships are genuine, I can't trust it because they're biologically programmed to appeal to every single race that exists, including the Protheans.
And now we see why Legion relates to the space racist.
Well, Banana is a notorious. He hates fake news.
Oh, I do. I hate misinformation.
So when you take an Asari and she's literally presenting herself falsely, no matter what you do, we don't know the true form of the Asari. We don't, because they look humanoid to us. To a Turian, they look more Turian. To a Solarian, they look more Solarian. We don't know what they look like. And that's not the point. But they are biologically programmed to not only appeal to us, they can't turn that off. And so we couldn't say that they're not also biologically programmed to manipulate us in every single aspect or form. We can't ever trust them. And that's kind of why I say that the Asari are great species to look at and to recognize and to study. But that's where Liara, no matter what she does from a romance standpoint, I can't trust. Because if you know that about the Asari, then maybe we give Liara the benefit of the doubt. Maybe we put ourselves out on a limb. And she doesn't betray us. I mean, she's actually, she's always got our back. She helps us through. And in going into, if there is a Mass Effect 4, which is not Andromeda, but if we go into Mass Effect 4, the trailer that we have is of Liara. And I think there's a lot of interesting metaphors there in those scenes. You do have to have played Andromeda, or at least know the story of Andromeda to know where I think those scenes are going.
There's a story?
Yeah. Well, the main thing to take from Andromeda is that it took a long time to get there. They didn't just show up 5 years later, right? They took them a long time
So
to
that's
get
all
there.
you need to know.
That's all you need to know. And one of the things that they had was a hibernation cryo table, whatever it is. And they kept some people in stasis because they were either not capable of handling that population. They only brought in the people that they needed, but there were also some people that they found had illnesses and sicknesses, specifically Ryder's mom. And so they kept her in that stasis. But who is the most powerful person in the Milky Way galaxy at those points when the Andromeda project was being done? Well, that's going to be your shadow broker, who is Liara. She knows about this stuff. She actually helps them. She actually has some cameos in Andromeda. At least her voice is. So she's very aware of the project, and she knows about all their technology, and she has access to all this stuff. So the trailer that's in Mass Effect 4 is her going up this steep mountainside or whatever. It's snowy, and she wipes off an N7 emblem. I mean, that's a metaphor. It's you're finding, and in certain playthroughs, again, I'm not going to go into the whole, this is not about this, it's about Liara. But Shep can live, and if he or she is so badly damaged, and by this point Liara does have access to all that tech, I could see that totally being transplanted. But this is all through the course of action of Liara. So she's almost the central figure at the same time. That's why I want to give her a higher rate than an A, but there's all these other things that come as baggage from the fact that she's an Asari that really kind of unfortunately pull her down. So I want to love Liara, but I also love the fact that I'm conflicted about Liara.
I'm not going to give that symbolism enough credit. Call it a metaphor. It's the most on the nose thing I've ever seen in my life. The only thing I was going to add, and I think we're pretty much in agreement, myself and Legion, at least not on the grade, but on where we're coming at this from. I think if Asari existed, they would be much scarier than the game makes them out to be. I think the other little detail is that, if I remember correctly, the children are always Asari.
Yeah.
No matter what the pairing is.
Right.
That's terrifying. They will look as attractive as possible to you, just genetically on a biological level. They are inherently charming, inherently charismatic, inherently gifted. I mean, the biotic level throughout their population is just... Is it everyone? If it's not everyone, it's an enormous amount of them. And then they supplant you genetically. They are always the dominant trait that gets passed down. That's terrifying. That's genuinely sinister.
And then there's two sides of it that see it as, well, we're trying to introduce genetic variation because we don't have much. The humans have the most genetic variation in the Mass Effect universe, but Asari have some of the least. So their reasoning for getting with Krogan, getting with humans, getting with any other species, even Hanar, the little jellyfish things, they still produce Asari, and there are conversations where some Asaris are saying that's total crap. We're not, there's no genetic passing down. It's just simply to basically force the carbon copy. So it really is interesting that how deep the manipulation goes. You're right.
I would suggest that if any race needed a genophage, it's them. It's considerably more sinister than the Krogan.
So you identify all of these advantages that Asari have, all of these things that kind of put them in this terrifying position, that elevate them to this sinister role. None of those things necessitate a sinister behavior. All of those things make them more capable of it.
Yeah.
But we don't see Asari really embracing that too frequently. And maybe the deception is just that complete, but I think the idea that they have all of these tools at their disposal to the point that they don't even really need to try, and yet they're all trying to do their own thing. Liara is going off and pursuing knowledge of this fruitless niche piece of history that's maybe not going to lead anywhere. There are Asari all around the universe who are pursuing their own goals, and they all sort of behave in a similar way to all of the other races. So they are naturally predisposed to deception, and yet they're still exactly like us. And it seems like overwhelmingly they're just working with us.
Yeah.
I think that's admirable.
I think you're
might
right.
not continue to be the case, as you've just pointed out. But for now...
I am 100% with you. It is really just the specter of the idea is what's sinister. As they are, I don't think they're quite there yet, if they ever would be.
What we have to remember that in Mass Effect 3, they're exposed. They do know about their history. They do know that they didn't actually uplift themselves. They didn't grow into the technology. They were basically groomed for the technology. And so you see them working with other civilizations, because I think if they don't have the numbers to support everybody else turning against them, but if other civilizations were wise enough to say, you've been, you've been the puppet master this whole time, we can't allow that. So they could be exposed for that. So that's why they have kept it hidden. They don't want to tell anybody. I mean, what's wrong with telling them, like, look, we didn't get here on our own. We had some help, but they hide it. And that's just so that they can still further manipulate the galaxy.
Well, I think the idea that we've talked about with Ashley and her space racism plays a big role in there, is the idea that they have installed themselves in a position of power because of their advancement. And to acknowledge that they are not the sole race responsible for their advancement would undermine their image in that position of authority. And they've proven themselves as capable leaders in that position of authority. So for them to announce like, hey, we didn't get here ourselves, kind of undermines the conclusions that they draw in this role, to the point that it feels detrimental to the universe's advancement to take a race like the Asari and say they can't be trusted.
Yeah. So I have her as an A tier because, like I said, if I don't like Liara, I don't think she's useful. If I truly think she's manipulating me, I don't think she is. But if I truly thought that, then I'd put her in a D. But no, she's an A for me.
She's an A for me as well.
She's a C for me.
Oh, interesting. I would have never seen her as a B, though. That's what I'm saying. So you see it as a C because of all the manipulation, or?
No, I think for me it's largely the lack of, what's the word? Impediments in her story. She seems to just glisten and glide from one success to the next.
She's
which
a
I don't
nepo
find-
baby.
Yeah, she's a nepo baby. She has every possible strength that could be bestowed upon her, and pretty much all of her failings are just minor and can be very, very easily overcome. I don't use her that much in battle, so she doesn't have that gameplay boost either. For myself, if I'm going to have a biotic in a team, normally I want my Shepherd as the biotic, and then Rex as the backup, possibly even Kaiden on top of that as well. And as I go further into the games, I have more fun with other biotics. I prefer Jack in the team. I prefer Samara in the team. Not really necessarily thinking they're better, but I prefer having them there. So she doesn't have, for me, the character arc that I like. It's not bad. I just think from success to success to success is a bit of it's not that interesting. And she doesn't sadly have the gameplay that would just counteract that. As one other character later on, I don't like their story that much, but I love their gameplay.
I see that we would have to put Liara as a B. We almost need a tiebreaker for this one. Almost.
I'm fixating on Com's statement about her being a nepo baby, just because it feels like you are holding her physiological advantages against her to say she didn't work for them. And she didn't. But she also didn't choose to be advantaged. She didn't choose privilege.
She's actually disadvantaged in the society because she's considered a pureblood.
That is true. She is definitely, and I think her research kind of makes her an outcast within her society as well. So she almost has chosen disadvantages. She hasn't chosen the advantages. You can't choose not to benefit from advantages in that role. There's no denying that she has advantages. They elevate her over her peers. But I feel like you are evaluating her circumstances and holding her responsible for them.
Yep, I am doing that. I am 100% doing that. And I appreciate that she has cast aside some of the advantages. You know, she was born on the Grand Manor estate with the pool and the shooting range and the forest. And it's true, she has chosen to sell the stables. She has done that, and I respect that very, very much. But for me, it's really not. It's just the arc I find uninteresting. It's just the arc. There's not enough problems within her arc for me to find any real fascination in there.
Oh yeah. And just to be clear, if this was a real person, I would be more aggressive at correcting you. But because this is a story and she is a fictional character created for this story, you're absolutely right. You have to take into account the full picture, because the full picture is her character. The writers could have made her any other way, and they chose to make her this.
I would have never imagined us, or I would have never imagined Com giving her a C. And that's why I was on the side of like, this is going to be an easy A with some B sprinkled in. But when he said C, that's going to pull us to a B. But I guess that's just where we are. We have.
Well, I think
we're at a high B on average. So
yeah, you're on a high B, possibly even rounded to an A. I'll let you guys fall on that because you are clearly very united on what it should be.
Well, I didn't call her S because if she was S, then we'd be having that discussion. But no,
you can always go back.
Yeah,
but I don't think she is an S tier. I just, from my point of view, I think A is
if only we could somehow edit this. I don't know.
Across
I would just love you to piece together clips of us saying S tier and like clearly different tones, different volume. It's like very much Legion manipulating so that everything just works out to his answers.
No, I'll be honest. I despise Liara, and I really, really think that she should get an S.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I feel like that would be spectacular if we have everybody's individual tier list appear, and then the collective group just matches up exactly with Legion's.
Well, let me offer one final thought then for just whether it's an A or a B. It's really, who do you think she aligns more with? Do you think Liara aligns with Ashley, who got a B? Or do you think she's on par with Wrex, who got an A?
I'm giving Wrex an A because he would be an S if I could play him more. That's it. I do get to play with Liara more, so she's an A.
You think she lines up?
I think the reason Ashley is lower is because I get to see more of her and I don't like it.
So you think she aligns much more closely then in terms of your favorites with Wrex than she does with Ashley?
I do.
Then give her an A.
Well, we did.
No, we didn't.
You gave her an A.
We gave her a B because you gave her a C.
Yeah, but give her an A across the board. I don't know what's hard about this. The average mark.
The ultimate conclusion is that we just ignore your input and give her what we decided.
Right, basically, you've got two choices. You do this, or I pull it down to an F and she's going in the fucking C's.
It's a group project. I mean, it's not a...
And you're holding us back.
Yeah.
I think that could have been aimed at either one of us. You're holding us back. Choose.
I mean, I could have been talking to myself. I just like the idea of Legion and I holding your hand, walking you to the conclusion that Liara is an A, just so we can pass her off as an A, and you're just like, she's a C.
You're really pushing me the other way.
I know. I
But if they like
thoroughly
it, there must be
enjoy
something wrong.
that you have this conviction that she's a C. It just makes this more entertaining.
I think the issue here is that Tom is a contrarian. So if I said Ashley was a...
It actually does.
Yeah. If I said Ashley was a D, and I gave all these reasons why she's a D character, I forget her. D stands for dump. Tom would be like, you know what? I see an S here. I'm seeing an S.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait until we get to my F tiers. And Cobb is just first of all, not only are you wrong, but I hate you and I'm quitting the podcast.
Is it S for space racist? I mean, yeah.
He's just contrarian.
The name of the podcast, I believe, is The Gamer's Advocate. What is the very job of the devil's advocate is to argue the other case.
Yeah. You're right.
I'm sticking with my C. I'm moving towards F unless we move on.
No, yeah. I think that puts Liara in the B tier overall.
Well, thank you for watching the Gamer's Advocate Mass Effect 1 Companion Tier List. We hope you enjoyed it, and if there were any companions that you disagreed with, maybe Garrus should have been an A, or maybe Liara should have been an S, make sure you leave us a comment. And stay tuned for the next tier list where we'll discuss Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 companions. Thank you very much.